Welcome back, guys, to yet another World of Warcraft video for the World Within. Today we are going to be talking about profession gear and profession accessories, where to get them, what kind of profession actually makes all the stuff that you need so it's easy to figure out, and then I am also going to be talking about the impact of what these different profession gear pieces can actually do, and whether or not quality is super important for the kind of setup you have for your professions. So there's a lot to go through. Before we do get into the video, make sure that you guys drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel with all the notifications on, because it helps out greatly with the algorithm, but also you won't miss any future videos about super important topics and amazing videos that you obviously don't want to miss. Anyways, today I'll start out, obviously, just by talking about the most important factor, which is going to be what professions makes the accessories and tools for other professions. Now, you can take a screenshot of this or whatever you want, but I've made this very simple and easy to understand. I know it's not the greatest to look at, and I know we have some, spreadsheet, and I want to say this as nicely as I can. Freaks. Obviously, spreadsheets can look amazing and nice, but just for the simple purpose of what I want to get across here, this is what I made. And it's very simple. You have your accessory number 1 and 2, and then you have your profession tool. Then I put over here on the left side, on the y-axis or whatever you want to call it, I have every single profession. So if you look at something like alchemy, what makes the profession gear for alchemy is one of the accessories is tailoring, the other one is leatherworking, and then you have the profession tool for inscription. Right? So alchemy is pretty unlucky considering the fact that you have to, participate with 3 other professions to get the gear that you need. But something like blacksmithing, you can make one of your accessories and also one of your tools, but then you have to, participate with leatherworking to get the other accessory. But every single profession is a little different. This is just to show you guys like an idea of where you can find it so you don't have to look or guess or maybe find something online. And if you made it this far, then this is the place to find it online. There's also a couple of things for fishing and cooking, some profession tools, and also an accessory or 2. So I mentioned those in the bottom. They're not as important. Just, keep that in mind because there's not as much quality, and like all the profession stats don't impact fishing and cooking in the same way. So take that with a grain of salt if you want. Now, on to the next point of why I wanted to make this video. I wanted to talk about the impact of these profession gear pieces and the difference between one that will cost 300 Artisan's Cutie, which is, by the way, a very limited, material in the World Within, and the regular green version. And I want to start out by saying, if you look, I'm going to take it as an example from tailoring, okay? In tailoring, you have the green quality version, and then you have your, blue epic version. Obviously, as I showed right before, depending on the profession, that might be a little different as to how you can actually, gain access to it. Every single green version of these profession gear pieces are bind on when equipped, right? Bind and equip. So you can post these on the auction house, which means it's way easier to be able to get access to these. Not only that, they also don't cost any Artisan's Cutie, and they are way, 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 way cheaper to make. Now, if you look at the upgraded blue version here, you'll also notice that the stats increase for however much you can actually get out of it, but you will have to spend 300 Artisan's Cutie. And this is the case for both of your profession accessories, but it's also the case for a profession tool. And in something like tailoring, if you're wanting to go into bag crafting per se, you want to craft profession bags, almost every single one of those recipes will cost you 150 Artisan's Cutie to buy. So you have to be very careful with how you actually spend your Artisan's Cutie, because it's a very limited material that you have access to in the World Within as the weeks go by. So to put this into perspective, if you look at a quality 5 version of one of the accessories for tailoring, you can see that it gives you 65 multi-craft and 97 on ingenuity. Now, the difference that actually makes, right? If I don't have this equipped, this all fully depends on how far you are into the profession, so it's not like a full perspective because it depends on the profession builds that you have and all that. But just to show you guys, like, it's a small difference, right? But multi-crafting obviously doesn't impact gear. It impacts, materials and all that. But just to show you guys, we have the regular green version, and as I said, 97 ingenuity, 65 multicraft. Now, if you go over to the blue version, right, then we have, this is just a quality 3, right? And early on, when people are not at the point where they can actually max this out, because the recipe difficulty is 505. So unless you have a lot of high quality materials and you are very far into your profession, I think most people are going to be able to make these at like quality 3, maybe quality 4 with concentration. But that's actually besides the point. But what I want to talk about is that you can see right here that we go from 65 multicraft to 89. So an increase by what? 24. And then you go from 97 to 133 ingenuity. So that's what? 36? So that's 60 points of profession stats that you actually go up by, which is, it's a pretty significant amount. But if you think about that in the grand scheme of things, if you want to spend 300 artisans acuity on being able to get a little bit more on the profession stats, then you absolutely can. But you can also consider it in a way where, well, 300 artisans acuity could get me 2 recipes that I could be broadening the amount of stuff that I can actually sell and maybe even do work orders for. So early on, you're going to have to make impactful decisions and like very choice-heavy decisions that you can't go back on. So if you decide to go for your profession gear, it's not because that's going to be a letdown, but then it should be because the profession stats that you actually get out of that accessory or the profession tool are so important for your specialization that it makes sense. So on something like this, because it has multicraft and ingenuity, if you are a gear crafter, there's almost no case where you should be using 300 artisans acuity on this, at least early on, because you could be missing out on giving other people the option or buying recipes to level up your profession and all of that. So it's a choice that you can make, because you can't use the multicraft for anything if you're just crafting gear and you're doing work orders for other people. So half of this accessory you can't use. And then you're just talking about 36 points of ingenuity. And that's not that big of a difference, because you can see right now we have 10% ingenuity. If I equip this, it's an additional 4%. If I equip this, it's 5%. So it's a 1% difference on ingenuity. And ingenuity is your percentage chance to refund 100% of your concentration. So not only do you have a limited amount of concentration tries, but if you don't get lucky enough and actually use you get lucky enough to proc ingenuity, then the stat is worthless. So say that you craft 10 pieces of gear and you're out of concentration and you don't get any ingenuity procs. Well, then you get absolutely nothing out of this. But on the other hand, that 1% could also give you a chance to make maybe 2 extra crafts, which could make you quite a lot of gold. But on the other hand, if you spend 300 artisans acuity on something else in the first couple of weeks, then like profession bags, and they end up making you way more gold and it's way more sufficient because you don't have to rely on RNG, then that's a consideration that you have to make. Maybe you want to go for the RNG related build. Maybe you don't. That's all up to you and the math and the grand scheme of things. But it's just putting this into a perspective for where you guys can see, okay, maybe I shouldn't go for the highest possible quality in something like this. Or maybe I should because I'm interested depending on my build. And this obviously is different for every profession, every single build. And it's also different based on what each and every single stat on the accessories and the profession tools and what they give you. And it's also like, if you are planning on making a bunch of alts very early on, then you could be in a position where you're like, okay, well, 300 artisans acuity, that is a lot to be spending on these alts. And it'll take a while before I get there. Maybe I want to work on certain recipes or I have to buy up certain things. And even if it's not an artisan's acuity point, you're still going to have to spend quite a lot of gold on getting other people to craft it. And if you can make it yourself, then that's great. That's also why I showed what professions can actually make these different things early on. If you want to do your own ecosystem, then that opens up for a whole other branch of opportunities. But it's a consideration that you have to make. It's also something that I really thought about early on, because as an opportunity, if you run out of artisan's acuity, if you are a person that are like, okay, I want to buy every single recipe, I don't care about my profession gear because I'll just pay other people to use their artisan's acuity. That's something a lot of people did early on in Dragonflight, that they would say, yo, I need 300 artisan's acuity, just to give you guys an example. I need 300 artisan's acuity. Do you have it? And then you could ask people however much they want, or you can offer a certain price for what you think it's worth. And then you can decide, okay, well, if this guy is asking me for, I don't know, 40K for the artisan's acuity, well, 40K, instead of having to use your own on it, where it could take multiple weeks, or maybe you would have to do multiple characters with all sorts of different builds to avoid certain breakpoints or limitations in professions, well, then that is something that you could also consider paying other people for using their artisan's acuity on you. Very limited resource, and the same thing with concentration. So there's a lot of considerations to be made. But that's another reason like why I wanted to make this video. I hope that makes sense in a way. At least it does in my brain. I hope I articulated it in a way and presented it in a way as to make it somewhat understandable. And also the list earlier, that's all. Obviously, just, remember to take a screenshot and all of that. And if you guys made it to this point of the video, I really appreciate it. And we're just going to be saying that you guys are going to type what are you going to type in the game? I always stumble. Actually, type herbs down in the comments below. That'll make a certain somebody, you know who you are. Herbs. Type that down in the comments below. I appreciate you guys for watching, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.